Ciao everyone, welcome to episode number 4 of Voices of Italy Beyond La Dolce Vita. Today we're going to talk about the Sanremo Music Festival. It's something that every Italian knows or heard about. You really must be living in a cave to be Italian and not know what Sanremo is. But foreign listeners might not be familiar with it, so let me paint a quick picture for you. Imagine an event that it's sort of a fusion between the Oscars and Eurovision, but it's orchestrated by middle aged Italians that love dramatic love songs and glittery outfits. That's Sanremo. The festival is actually named after a really small town in Liguria, nothing huge like Rome or Milan or Venice. But Sanremo has really a big cultural impact in Italy. It has shaped our music industry, TV, and even political debates. But this is because even if it's a music festival, music is often not at the center of the stage. From weird scandals to viral funny memes, from iconic fashion moments to politically charged monologues, Italy talks about nothing but Sanremo at least for a whole week every year. All this makes Sanremo a perfect and unique window on Italian cultural society today. So it's also a perfect topic for this podcast. Italy is one of the most iconic countries in the world. But what does Italy mean to the world? What does it mean to you?
Buongiorno.
Pizza.
Ciao Bella.
Michelangelo.
Spaghetti.
Mafia.
Dolce Vita.
My name is Alessia, I'm Italian, and this is Voices of Italy, the podcast that peels back the layers of the Instagram perfect Italy to reveal everyday stories of authentic, surprising, and messy Italian life. I really mean it when I say that the Sanremo Music Festival is incredibly famous in Italy. It's one of those huge cultural institutions that everybody simply knows about. And I'm not saying that this means that they love it, but everybody knows about it. But despite that, even many Italians might not know that the Eurovision Song Contest, which is one of the biggest music competitions in the world, was actually inspired by our Sanremo. It's incredible. I also didn't know until recently. But this is what happened. In the early 50s, the European Broadcasting Union was created and was working on making program content available from one country in Europe to broadcasters in other countries in Europe. And that's when the Eurovision as a network was born. And music was one of the best types of program content because they needed a format that was really universal, that could work on an international scale, and that was able to unite European countries through a shared interest. So Sanremo, that was actually also founded in those same years, was already a huge success in Italy, combining music, live performances, and a national voting system. And seeing this huge popularity, the European Broadcasting Union used Sanremo as a blueprint to create the Eurovision Song Contest, which was launched in 1956. And the similarities are obvious even today because both competitions feature original songs performed live. There's a jury and public voting system that determines the winner, and performances are often over the top, theatrical. In a way, we could say that without Sanremo, Eurovision as we know it wouldn't exist. And Sanremo still plays an important role for Eurovision today because since 2015, the winner of Sanremo has the opportunity to represent Italy at the same year's edition of the Eurovision. So it's a quite prestigious stage for Italian artists because it really gives them that international fame. And the fun thing is that some older Italian singers are also super popular in East Europe and part of Russia because of Sanremo. Essentially, after World War II, not much of the music and culture from Western countries was getting in the Soviet Union because of the Cold War. But in the 70s and in the 80s, Sanremo was one of the very few programs that were broadcasted by the Soviet TV broadcaster. So it happened to be really successful and created this huge image of Italian music culture that is still crystallized, and it still gives huge popularity even today to Italian singers like Albano, Pupo, I Ricchi e Poveri, and Celentano. Those that maybe here in Italy they're considered a little more traditional, but they're still very popular and still have concerts in those East European countries. But the event in itself, I guess you could describe it as some sort of a marathon spanning 5 nights, features a lot of performances. They really feel endless at times. It's really one of those fun facts that Italians share when it comes to Sanremo, because there's a lot of sort of filler content. But it became sort of a national celebration, really a cultural institution, definitely more than a music competition. I think I could describe it as a long standing ritual that fairly mirrors Italy's evolving social and musical trends. Definitely not just musical. The event is so significant that a lot of attention is also dedicated to the presenters and the hosts, for example. It's a little bit like the Oscars. It's a big deal when they announce who the presenter is going to be. Sort of, it's going to give it its own style. And who is chosen as a presenter for Sanremo, it's usually also the artistic director. So it's a quite prestigious role for TV personalities. It's a little bit of a status symbol, if you will. But even the co hosts are usually quite popular figures like comedians, actors, more recently, even big social media influencers like Chiara Ferragni. And even the co hosts are really at the center of the attention. It's very much talked about, both for the very high expectation that I think the audience has on this kind of role, but also sometimes for the debate around their remuneration. By many, is considered scandalously high since the festival is organized and funded by Rai, which is the Italian public broadcaster. So their pay is sometimes more than anything else on the news all the time. One thing that makes Sanremo really cool from a music perspective, though, is that unlike other big events like Eurovision, where songs rely really on pre recorded instrumentals, Sanremo features a full live orchestra. It really adds a little bit of that greatness already. When you see it, when you hear it, it's definitely a different effect. And the orchestra conductors are highly respected. An orchestral arrangement is considered a prestigious thing in itself to the performance. Another thing that Sanremo is particularly known for is what I would call the voting drama. Essentially, Sanremo has a mixed voting system. There's a public vote via televoting from people watching. There's a press jury made of journalists that has their own impact as well. And there's also a vote from selected audience members. This leads to a huge controversy every year. Sometimes artists with high public votes lose still the competition due to jury decision. Generates conspiracy theories, endless debates on TV and social media about the symbolic value of an event like Sanremo for modern music industry, and how the voting system doesn't really reflect modern industry, but maybe a more elitist and archaic vision that is not represented on the market. But overall, Sanremo has a big impact on those artists, even when they don't win. Winning Sanremo doesn't always guarantee commercial success on the market, but it surely ensures weeks of popularity, viral memes, endless discussions, and a permanent place in this Italian pop culture window because popularity just happens. It doesn't matter if you're ninth or even last in the competition. There are some performers and performances that are definitely legendary. I would think about Domenico Modugno, which not only was the first winner of the Sanremo Music Festival, but it really became sort of an ambassador with the song Nel blu dipinto di blu. It's really a song that made him a global ambassador for Italian music in the world. It's a song from 1958 and really became an international sensation. I bet that wherever you are from, whatever you are listening from, you must have heard the melody at least once. And even recently, Maneskin winning in 2021 with the song Zitti e Buoni, it really made them a global phenomena that year. I haven't seen an Italian music artist being so popular, even in America, for example, and in Asia in a very long time. The band had previously won the TV competition X Factor, but really what launched them was Sanremo, also because they then became that year's artist for Italy at the Eurovision Song Contest. But still, scandals and drama really takes over completely the news. This is the part where it's more related and famous for Italians. So whenever I say Morgan contro Bugo, Italians will know what I'm talking about.
Le brutte intenzioni, la maleducazione, la tua brutta figura di ieri sera.
It's an infamous on stage meltdown. These two artists, Morgan and Bugo, they were presenting a song together, but there was this huge drama on stage and they became like huge life enemies. It was hilarious, really. But I'm also referring to more theatrical moments. There is this Italian artist, his name is Achille Lauro. I remember his first performances in Sanremo. It was considered really scandalous because he has this sort of gender bending style, rock star energy that definitely challenged the norms of the program that it's supposed to be, or it's known for being the prestigious and elegant face of Italian music. So it sort of shocked that side of the audience. Something that, in my opinion, the festival really doesn't do good with is representation. It really tends to be, despite the good intentions, the will to talk about important topics for society, a lot of the times it really feels like there's, the stereotypical paternalistic middle-aged white guy behind those texts, behind those arrangements, behind those artistic choices. But more than that, there have been actually quite a few instances of derogatory remarks and behavior. More recently, I've really been kind of shocked myself about how aggressive the debate gets, especially around the new generation of Italian performers and multi-ethnic Italian performers and the subtle discrimination faced by those artists. The festival has really struggled with providing a proper inclusive environment, and same media and the press have failed to represent Italy's growing diversity. For instance, Mahmood is one of the top popular artists in Italy right now. It's been for a few years, and I believe he is quite successful abroad as well. And despite winning the Sanremo Festival in 2019 with the song Soldi, he faced a huge backlash from more conservative commentators who really questioned his Italian identity due to his Egyptian heritage. This is one of those incidents that really reflect a broader conversation on racism and national identity in Italy, something very similar to what we have talked about in the first episode of this podcast. And within Italians' mainstream media, entertainment industry, you can always sort of see this contradiction where people that claim that they really know Italy and they really want to preserve Italian identity are also more often than not the same people that really cannot see how Italy is changing and how diverse it's becoming. And that's just how it is, like it or not. That's just one of those reasons why the debate about Sanremo has been shifting in the years, and I feel like it has um, uh, a reputation that is increasingly in crisis. Sanremo used to be a launchpad for emerging artists. Many big names were born from the competition, or at least were really launched internationally through the competition. Really, Laura Pausini, Eros Ramazzotti, Giorgia, Il Volo, all those artists that might be more or less familiar abroad, depending also on the region that we're talking about. But still, Sanremo was a huge stage for all of them. And today, a lot of artists approach Sanremo with nostalgia, or worse, with a lot of criticism, saying that it feels outdated compared to global music trends or other similar events, and they judge the festival to be too elitist, stuck in the past, organized really by old-minded people. On the other hand, the event had to slowly but progressively open itself to new music trends, including, for example, rap music or trap music, which would have been unthinkable just, I want to say, just 1 decade ago, to include anything that is not classic Italian music or light pop music. They slowly started to include a more diverse type of artists and performances, because there was actually a need to open to new things. Let's be honest, it's an event. It must be successful with the wider audience to work. But however your opinion is on the recent changes of the festival, anything unfortunately gets super polarized when it's talked about on the news or on social media, because we have conservative political groups that really judge the festival and those changes as like sort of forcefully introducing alien and low level performances, ruining the traditional Italian music festival the way it used to be. And on the other hand, you have the more progressive groups that really find these changes still not enough, especially in light of explicit displays of discrimination and rejection towards, well, every novelty, even though these changes have been positive for the popularity of the festivals. And who knows, all this might change really soon. All this debate could get even more fiery because, and this is a very recent news, 2025 actually marks the final year for Rai, again, national Italian broadcaster, to directly produce Sanremo, which has been the case since the very beginning. But starting in 2026, a public tender will determine the festival's organizer. This could open to potentially new formats, greater commercial influence, or even really a reduction of those more traditional elements of the festival. We really don't know. But public tender or not, Sanremo is Rai's most valuable asset. Every February, Rai draws millions of viewers, even from a target audience that normally doesn't really watch any of the Rai networks or doesn't watch traditional TV channels anymore, because, of course, young people are starting to prefer streaming services. Well, for those 5 nights every year, Rai takes a lot of that audience as well. They have been considered inseparable. The first edition of Sanremo aired in 1951, and since 1955, it has been a Rai exclusive. This means that Sanremo is also one of Rai's biggest revenue generators. A lot of the money comes from advertising. So, for example, in 2023, one ad slot during Sanremo costed up to 500,000 euros for 30 seconds. So it's comparable to major international events in this regard. And as I was saying, they also get a total dominance of viewership. The festival averages a share of, I think, 60 or 70%. It's an absolute ratings monster in Italy, and it makes Rai the most watched program of the year just because of that event. And this also implies that big brands fight for visibility and sponsorship and partnership, from fashion houses dressing the host to tech giants sponsoring digital interactions. All the big brands fight for their slice of the cake at Sanremo. But beyond the numbers, Sanremo, because it is being produced by Rai, it's also been considered a public service, as if the festival has some sort of responsibility and duty to promote Italian music and culture. And that's why it's considered so important that Sanremo stays in touch with new generations, that gives space to different genres and artists, and, fosters national identity. For many Italians, it's really a ritual, something to discuss, critique, and celebrate together. But the connection to Rai, it's more than just financial, it goes beyond ownership. As I was saying, really, the two things have been always connected in everybody's minds, and the festival reinforces Rai's cultural authorities in Italy. It sort of proves that even in an era of infinite amount of content, a traditional broadcaster can still take over the whole country for 5 nights in a row every year. So it's really a status symbol for Rai. I'm really curious to see how the new decision about the tender will affect this aspect. But I'm not sure that something as big as Sanremo can actually reinvent itself. I'm not sure of how many and which ones of other broadcasters, private broadcasters, or even streaming platforms could even have any chance to approach the festival. It means definitely taking this huge event that completely monopolizes the attention of the Italian country. So it's a big deal, but it's also a huge risk because, again, the debates and the political sensitivity around Sanremo, it's really, really incredible. It's really ingrained in our Italian cultural DNA, I want to say. It's one of those big parts of Italian pop culture identity today. But what are your thoughts on Sanremo's evolution? Either you're Italian or you're very familiar with the festival. Do you still feel as if it holds a vital place in Italian culture, or is it time for a change? Share your opinion on Instagram or Bluesky. I'm really, really curious to hear from you guys and see what your impression is. And as a quick recommendation for this episode, I would definitely say to all the foreigners listening to deep dive a little bit more in the kind of music that really wins Sanremo, how it can change along the years. Search on Spotify the playlist related to either the winners or the most popular hits, and it will definitely give you a good idea of how Italian music has been evolving in the past few decades.